Welcome to Hip Hop Movie Club, the show that harmonizes the rhythm of hip hop with the magic of movies. Today we're discussing episode 1 of the 2019 Wu-Tang Clan documentary of Mics and Men. We're three old heads who put their old heads together to vibe on these films for you. I'm Dino Wright, podcaster, filmmaker, longtime hip hop fan. I'm going to the first show of their farewell tour in Baltimore.
I'm JB, 80s and 90s nostalgia junkie, longtime hip hop fan. And I'm also attending the Wu-Tang farewell tour, but in Boogie's hometown of Newark, New Jersey, aka Brick City.
Hey.
Yeah,
I'm Boogie, a DJ, longtime hip hop fan, and while PE is my favorite rap group, I feel like Wu-Tang Clan may be the greatest one.
In this episode, we'll answer the question, what is the origin story of the Wu-Tang Clan? And please hit that subscribe button down below so you won't miss an episode.
Robert Diggs, RZA, and the other members of the Wu-Tang Clan are introduced as survivors of difficult circumstances who found solace in hip-hop, kung fu cinema, and the 5% Nation.
And here are 5 things you need to know about episode 1 of Mics and Men. Really the 5 things that form the Wu-Tang Clan. Number 1, the economic conditions and racial tensions in Staten Island made them want more from life. Number 2, family ties and bonds forged in Park Hill gave them glue and togetherness. The 5% Nation's teachings gave them self-esteem and an important organizing principle. Number 4, RZA almost going to jail for 8 years. After that, he walked straight, gave them a second chance at life. And number 5, Kung Fu and the martial arts aesthetic gave them their other important organizing principle.
Yeah, let's dig in of Mics and Men episode 1. This is a great documentary, and I can't wait to dig into the other episodes coming up. But first takeaway, as you mentioned, Dino Wright, the economic conditions, racial tensions of Staten Island. So they kind of like converted Staten Island to the slums of Shaolin, and that was like their spiritual, physical foundation for Wu-Tang Clan, all about the upbringing and the difficult times that they had to face and trials and tribulations. Boogie, we want to talk a little bit more about like what they were facing with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so Staten Island is often looked at as one of the forgotten borough. I mean, most people talk about Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, but yeah, Staten Island kind of gets left behind a little bit when people talk about what's going on in New York City as a geographic, location. But they had a lot of same things that they dealt with in other boroughs. Poor conditions, crime. People having to resort to selling drugs to make a way for themselves. We dealt with the same kind of opposition and tension, in dealing with the police officers in the area. There were several stories. I know specifically Method Man mentioned one when he was 16 years old on his way out, and the cops kind of grabbed him up and frisked him down. And luckily somebody came by and said, "Oh, that's not the person we're looking for." But, they let him go, but, no apology or anything. It was just like, hey, go, beat a kid, get out of here. And he's kind of like, thought that was normal to get treated that way as a child. And, then they mentioned the story of a young man who was killed in Staten Island, Ernest Sayon, who actually was killed by police in the neighborhood. They didn't really get much into it, but you could tell that there was a lot of discrepancy surrounding the story of what happened to him. People were protesting in the area. They had Mayor at the time, Rudy Giuliani, speaking to the crowd, and they were really trying to hear what he was saying because it seemed like he was more so making excuses for what happened instead of listening to what the people were saying. But I think these hardships that the young man had to deal with coming up, like any other group that you can think of that comes out of the city, it made them want more. It made them hungry for wanting more. Papadon said it best. This is a culture created from expression. It's a way of life. Hip hop. That's what happens. And these guys were no different.
Yeah, well stated, Boogie. They were poor. They said, we were broke. We're living in the projects. The projects literally were built like a prison. It's like a combine where they're enclosed, and it's like a metaphor for like there's really no way out. So we're kind of looking for a way out, and they they leaned on their hip hop. Like the timing was like hip hop was taking off, and they thought if we could master this craft, all of us together, those conditions galvanized them. They face a lot of racism, called the N word, chased, bottles thrown at them, riots, fights, and again, just by diving into the hip hop culture, they were strengthened that. Strength in numbers and strength in their talent. For sure. Donna, right? Anything to add about Staten Island as the foundation?
The Shaolin, as they like to call it. The Park Hill Project, like you said, they were set up like a prison, and all the other amenities that you would need in a neighborhood were all there. And so I think Method Man talked about this. Like some people never left because they made it so you didn't have to. But metaphysically, he wanted a way out. Like he saw that there was hope within all of this mess that you could get out, or you could rise from your situation. And they do use this as a theme, rising later on. So yeah, out of really difficult circumstances, it really fueled their art.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, when they tend to think of the North, they think of, the North is it's free of, racism, it's free of segregation. But in a lot of these cities, you'll see that there are clear-cut lines with neighborhoods where you don't cross the lines. And there's the projects, like JB said, they're made for you not leave. And you're in those lines. And most people tend to stay in those lines. We saw the same thing when we talked about Time is Omatic, That's their way of life. Some people never leave, but thank God that these guys had a vision and a few to want more.
Yeah, so most of Wu-Tang Clan grew up in Staten Island, but I know that they said Jizza was from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and so was Old Dirty Bastard. But everybody else, I think, was from Staten Island. If you look at, this documentary, episode 1, this is great because it kind of just again lays the foundation. A lot of them, went to school together. They said that their mothers knew each other for the most part. And I guess that's kind of a good segue to our next takeaway, which is family ties and bonds that were forged in Park Hill gave them that glue and togetherness. So having those actual true family ties where it was built on existing closeness, neighborhood bonds, and family ties in terms of like literally ODB, Jizza and RZA were cousins. And it started with that brotherhood and camaraderie. They talk about they were like little rascals. They were playing kickball and floating on makeshift rafts in the one pond. And they had all the different personalities. And so they all brought some other different element to the group. And again, you see a lot of people like, they would met with some challenges. Like, you have 9 and you got so many guys. How's it going to work? But they were like, we're not worried about that. We're family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of them mentioned they came from broken homes, but like it was that unshakable loyalty among the members because they had that bond, and it started with the bond. And it wasn't like, it wasn't like a group that was put together by the producer or a record company. It's like, we're going to, like you see these boy bands and other things like that. It's like that, this was formed organically. And that was
purely organic.
Yeah, that was beautiful to see.
And not that they don't have their own conflicts, but
right,
they were really tight.
Yeah, I remember Divine was saying that him and Raekwon were best friends before the Wu. They grew up as best friends. You got, hey, we've been playing together since we were 5 years old. It's like, wow.
Yeah. I learned a lot about their different personalities. Like, I gotta be honest, like I didn't know that much about the unique qualities of each individual. I think that Method Man gets a lot of the FaceTime, and ODB became a mega star because of his solo career and his collaborations. Like you said, folks like You God, and I know Ghostface Killer had his own solo, and Raekwon and Inspector Deck is like I loved hearing about You God, and they said beautiful violence, right? And Ghostface Killer got his name from the martial arts, and he was a breakdancer and stuff like that. So I really liked seeing those unique aspects of each individual. Raekwon the Chef has street elegance, they said, with a great voice. Inspector Deck has seen everything. I mean, I guess where he lives, he could see the street and everything happening in front of him. So he had those types of experiences. And Capadonna, they said, was a slang master. And even like you see a lot of all the different elements that we always talk about with hip hop. And Method Man and Raekwon would they would do tags with graffiti. So yeah, it was kind of cool to see behind the scenes of these guys.
Absolutely.
I like that Sasha Jenkins, the director, brought them to the St. George Theater in Staten Island to have them watch their own archival clips and film their reactions. That was really nice.
Yeah.
This is a kind of like summation of their career, and that was really neat. I like what he did there, and it looked really nice. Like to have them sitting there, you reunited. It had a really good look to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely a nice touch.
Yeah, and they could see that even the stuff that, the stuff that was, difficult to watch, they can kind of see how they could move past it, by seeing how they were acting and, understanding that they got that far because they worked together. And that's the reason why they all became successful, because they did it together. It wasn't like one person went out on their own and did it. And, no, they went out together and became who they were.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess RZA had that vision and it's like, these are all my friends and these are like the dopest rappers I know. And we're the Wu-Tang Clan. He said Wu-Tang slang first and then, Wu-Tang Clan. And there's a lot of meaning behind that, which we'll get to. RZA was also inspired by the 5% Nation's teachings, and it gave him self-esteem and among the other members as well. And that was an important organizing principle among the Wu-Tang Clan. Dad, all right, you want to talk a little bit more about what you saw here with the 5% Nation?
Sure.
Yeah.
So RZA comes across these teachings from the 5% Nation, and they go through the supreme mathematics. They go through the Asiatic black man being the original man, and so that it made its way into their rhymes too. So it gave them a sense of like importance and self-esteem. Like the human race originated that with the Asiatic black man they talk about, and so when you're faced with this racism from other groups and like just rivalries with other ethnic groups in Park Hill, to have that kind of boost to their self-esteem really propelled them. There's a lot to the supreme mathematics and self-determination and knowledge of self. I don't really know it well enough to really talk about it, but it was influential for them, and it gave them confidence to pursue their craft too.
Yeah, definitely. That was huge. Good point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so RZA brought that philosophy. RZA was kind of like the visionary behind the group, as I mentioned, and galvanized this group with those philosophies. And you said it right. I'll repeat, propelled them to success in newer heights. And RZA himself is interesting because he, I think his family moved to Ohio, and he was still fairly young in his early 20s. Maybe he was around 20 or so. Early
22.
22. Yeah. And he was, someone got shot, and he was part of this feud, I guess, and he almost went to jail for 8 years. But that kind of scared him straight, and he had a new lease on life when he was released, or like when the charges, when he
He beat the rap.
He beat the charges. Exactly. That's what I was trying to say.
Not guilty.
Yeah.
Y'all got to feel me.
So yeah, he's like, listen, I could go one way, I could go the other. You see so many people from where he grew up not making it, and he said, man, I have an opportunity here. I'm going to try to follow I think his mother said, you can follow the straight and narrow path. You got to stay straight and narrow. And he did that, and he made the most of that opportunity.
He goes back to New York, reconnects with the other Wu-Tang Clan members, and they go from there.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these guys, and Boogie mentioned, like, because it was so hard to get by, because the society, there's a lot of obstacles. A lot of them resorted to selling drugs, and God, even Method Man had sold drugs. You got locked up at one point. You had mentioned already Boogie Divine, which was RZA's older brother. He hustled a lot, and he was actually really influential in kind of helping these guys with the monetary, with profits, building equipment, buying equipment, all this stuff, which was kind of from the sales of the drugs and stuff like that. Inspector Deck got locked up. So, I mean, Divine got locked up for a long time, and Inspector Deck got locked up, Capadonna as well. So, yeah, these guys were hustling because that's what they needed to do to get by. But fortunately, they grew both musically and intellectually, and they kind of started following a more straight and narrow path like RZA, and eventually would hit it big, thankfully. GZA was the first one to kind of come out with a record, right, as the Genius.
The Genius.
Yeah.
Genius.
The Genius, right? On that song Come Do Me, and that was played on MTV, I think. Some of his early early interview footage was really neat to see him and Old Dirty Bastard being interviewed. And ODB was in that video, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah. But then, I mean, the final takeaway, we got to talk about the Kung Fu and martial arts aesthetic and that influence. And that's makes these guys so unique. I love the story behind, you know, the Wu-Tang Clan and like, it's kind of like metaphorical for the group itself. And at the very beginning,
absolutely.
you see Wu-Tang is like, okay, Wu-Tang is the most powerful sword style, right, that they saw in martial arts. And everybody, you want to talk a little bit more about, you know, the meaning behind Wu-Tang?
Yeah, so Wu is the foundation of the universe, you know, and, you know, Wu Chi, he actually went to, you know, Wu-Tang Mountain in China and actually saw, you know, how they carry themselves there. But it's probably the most powerful force in the universe, and it brings everything together and it keeps everything intact. And that's kind of what the group was. It was a culmination of, you know, each individual MC having their own skills and bringing it to the table, and then, you know, as a collective forming a super group, if you will, based off of these teachings and moving forward and making themselves better. And it was just, I always thought they were so cool. Like, I remember, like, you know, hearing the first single, Protect Your Neck, and I'm like, what are these guys? Who are these guys? Like, you hear like the Saturday morning Kung Fu sound effects going on. It's like, what is this? What is this? You know, and then like the video, it was like very low grade, like they filmed it with a camcorder. And it's like, wow, these like, but the one thing you couldn't deny was like when they each one stepped in front of the camera, their skills were on front. Like wow, these guys are nice. And I think just hearing the Kung Fu element, sound effects was just so cool. Like they were like they brought it out. Like they were like the originators of that. Nobody was doing that. Everybody was either speaking about, you know, going back to the motherland, or, you know, what was going on in the hood, like as far as, you know, the violence that was going on, or, you know, being Afrocentric. But these guys were like, nah, we're doing our own thing. But even though it was based off of the 5%ers teachings, it was just so different. And I think that's what, you know, took the world by storm, and that's what made them as big as they were, because they were so different and then completely embraced it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Wu-Tang, again, it's also a metaphor for like the sword style, as we said, and like they said that their tongues are the swords.
Yes.
And it's funny when you said, what is that? That's exactly what some of these folks were saying in the documentary. Like they showed Seth Rogen for a clip or two, and he was like blown away, and even Nas was in it, I think, for a little bit. And like Stretch and Babito, we keep talking about them almost every episode now because they were so influential in getting the stuff on the air. And these guys would come, like this whole crew came into their studio, like, yo, you got to put this on, because they knew that if you get airplay there, you're going to get a lot of listeners, and people are going to want to get that music and be able to buy it in the record stores. Yeah. And Wu-Tang itself, like that phrase translates to he who is deserving of God. And I think RZA said that toward the very end. So yeah, it's a beautiful marriage between the martial arts. You hear the swords, ching, 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 and then you know, and they're powerful. The cadence that they have, and how they featured so many different members and their different styles. This is a marriage made in heaven between.
It's like I'm sitting here, I'm like looking at the cassette single, and it looks like, if you look at it, it looks like there's what might be like some kind of Bible of some sort, or, you know, religious book. And then there's a sword underneath, like you mentioned that the sword play, you know, the Wu-Tang being the sword style. But like, look at it, it's so raw. Like everybody else's, you know, cassette singles at the time had, you know, these flashy pictures and images and things on the front. And it looked like somebody drew it with a you know, somebody hand drew that. It was so raw.
Someone wrote that and drew it in a notebook.
Yeah. Maybe it was mathematics.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of mathematics, that's crazy how he hand drew that logo, and RZA paid him $400 for it. Man, that logo is worth millions now.
I was gonna say that the shirt that Dinah Wright has, like, that is such an iconic logo. The yellow W, right? That's more recognizable than, like, I don't know. It's probably like a top 100 brand, like, in the world.
Yeah,
If someone
easily.
just put that without the name Wu-Tang, you'd be like, what is this symbol? Like, you recognize it just like you do the Golden Arches and
Yeah.
Yeah.
the FedEx logo and the Prudential Rock and all this stuff. It's like you recognize this stuff. Like, it's Wu-Tang's everywhere.
Yeah.
They're internationally.
From a graphic design standpoint, too, they've remixed this and moved it around and twisted it and rotated it, and it turns into a lot of different logos for the other members. And you really know you got something here when it's that extendable.
That's true. One story that made me crack up is Mook, the manager. I love his marketing technique. How he planted his cousin in the one record store. When the song was first played, like on Stretch and Babito, and they wanted to drum up sales, and I think he brought in I think he bought a box of the records that they had produced, and he'd go in the record store, and there's hardly anybody in there, but his cousin's there, and then his cousin shouted like, "Yo, what's that song? It was Wu-Tang Clan? I heard it on Stretch and Babito. Oh yeah, you want to hear it? Yeah, it's like." And all of a sudden, yeah, I want to hear that. And all of a sudden, he's talking about it too. And then, lo and behold, other people come in the store and they catch on and they're like, "Yeah, I did hear that." And it just drummed up. And he said, "We did that in New York. Went down to North Carolina. We did that. We went all up and down the East Coast, and the same trick helped." It was genius marketing campaign. Yeah.
He made his own luck.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Pounding the pavement, and that was awesome. I love that. Amazing. But
I wish I'd seen more about why they picked "Protect Your Neck" as the first single, if any footage existed of them recording it, because their first single is amazing, but it sort of popped out of nowhere. So, maybe that footage doesn't exist, or maybe we see more of it later. I don't know. Spoil anything, but it's a choice, and I'm curious about this choice.
Interesting. There's another amazing part of this documentary was when Method Man goes back to the Statue of Liberty. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. Where he used to work for several years, and he goes back because he's his former manager. And I just love how he's so humble, and he's just this Method Man out there, and he's like sweeping underneath. "Excuse me, I still got this." And then he sees his former manager. He sees the one woman that worked at the restaurant there, and like, "Hey, what are you up to?" "I'm still Staten Island." And this was filmed. This was 2019, right? And so it's like, "Oh yeah. So you guys doing? You still live in the same area?" "Well, I'm still in Staten Island, but yeah, I have a nicer house now." I mean, my kids don't have to go through what I went through, but yeah, I'm still out here, doing things with the group. It's just like, you gotta be kidding me.
Very regular.
Yes, regular guy. Oh man, I actually saw Method Man walk by a couple times in person. So I was at a Jets game, and I got like a suite, and he's a big Jets fan, and he's narrated certain Jets documentaries, and like he just walked right past, hanging out. I'm like, that was Method Man. Yeah, and then when I went to Rock the Bells festival, he just walked right past. He was like filming a commercial, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And everybody's just like, just chilling.
You and Clifford Smith breathing the same air.
Yeah, man. Yeah, seriously. I mean, I had a couple close encounters with him. He seems like a great dude. Very, very. You could see when he went back to Statue of Liberty, he was very gracious, and he actually said, "This is one of the best times of my life." It gave him that purpose.
Best job you ever had.
Best job. Yes, the best job I ever had. I mean, that's really cool. Really cool to see that. You don't often see like these big time celebrities that hit it big go back to these what some people would call menial jobs or like blue collar jobs. Like, people probably like, "I'm never going back." But this was life, man. I made some money. It gave me a sense of purpose, and I enjoyed it. Right? Good people that work there.
Yeah, keeping your feet grounded and never forgetting where you came from.
Exactly. It talked about a couple of the other guys that were working with New Jersey. Wait, was it New Jersey Transit? Or they're working with the trains. And Mook was a bus driver. He's like, that was funny when Mook was like, "I've been driving the bus. You really want me to manage your group?" I was like, "Okay, I'll manage your group."
Sure,
I'll manage your Wu-Tang.
Okay.
Why not?
It could turn into something. Oh man, that's what I love about these documentaries is like these little snippets, like behind the scenes, is like kind of like the sliding doors thing. If he said no,
Yeah.
that concept, nah, I'm good.
Mhm. Yeah. All these little things
Yeah,
turn into this big thing.
exactly. Yeah, I like seeing ODB's family too. His mother, Cherry Jones, and then his brother was more of like a rock and roll guy. See some of his background. Yeah, ODB was a character.
Yeah. Probably the most eccentric one out of the group.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, boy.
Yeah.
They always knew he was different, right? And like he always had something to say, and he was always like singing. And it was funny because he was not into hip hop. Remember, they were like, he didn't really like hip hop. We listened a little bit of hip. He didn't really like it. He liked some of the classics, or I don't know if was he into R&B or some soul. Like he wasn't really into it. They kind of forced him. Like RZA was like, "Yeah, you do this. I want you to rap on this track." And then with his personality and his over the top charisma, it was insane.
Yeah, he had a completely different style and delivery. His cadence, everything was just completely different.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time I heard him, I was like, "Whoa, what this guy?" It's like completely different. It's like came from left field. Like what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he fit right in.
Yeah. It was both unique and fit in nicely with the rest of the group.
Right on. So, anything else to add about episode 1 of Mikes and Men?
Can't wait for the rest.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah.
Good stuff right here.
Stay tuned for part 2. Okay, Hip Hop Movie Club is produced by your HHMCs, JB, Boogie, and Dino Wright. Theme music by Boogie. Join us on April 24th at the Frank Banco Alehouse Cinemas at Steel Stacks in Bethlehem, PA, for a screening of Hustle and Flow in 4K starring Terrence Howard and Ludacris. Tickets at steelstacks.org. As always, check out our full live event schedule on our website, hiphopmovieclub.com. Thanks for watching the Hip Hop Movie Club show. Ring the bell so you get notified when we post new content. It's the sound of a power-up for us, so thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, we have more where that came from. Hit the thumbnail that's about to come on the screen.
And remember, don't hate, percolate.
Hey!
It's time, guys. It's time. It's time for the percolator. Oh man!
Oh my default theme song.
Love it. Yep.
Oh man, I don't even know how that happened.
Yeah.
So good.
And,
so good. People gotta know.
I always think of our dear friend, the late great Tony Whalen. He loved the percolator dance too.
He did.
With his hair flopping around like insane.
That was him.
That was him. That was his jam. Oh man, good times back in our college days with the percolator.
Times.
Yep, absolutely.